and welcome to That's Quilt Speaks. Today is Thursday, January 11th. I am Amy Beth, also known as the Fat Squirrel on Ravelry, and the FatSQRRL on Instagram. Thank you for coming over. Oh my goodness. Grab a cuppa. It's a little cold in the house today, so we have insulation because the ceramic is like you got like maybe 15 minutes and it's cold. But there are sumos. Oh, if you're newer to the podcast, I have a deep, deep love of the sumo citrus, which is available usually in January, late December. It just depends what season's gonna do, but they are widely available right now where I am in central Indiana. I sent the teen back to college with a box of them, like, you are loved. Don't get scurvy. Okay. But so yeah, there's that. But welcome and thank you for so much for visiting. If you're a patron of the podcast, thank you, thank you. I did just put out a special episode for you that talks a little bit about a new to me knitting book, which was embroidery on knits. It's gorgeous, FYI. And I talked a little bit about a couple of quilt projects I have in process right now. I will tell y'all about one of them here in a few minutes. So this episode is going to contain knitting, it's going to contain quilting, it's going to contain shameless self-promotion, it's going to contain what I am reading. So yeah, let's get into it. First off, shameless self-promotion. That's right, let's do it. Excuse me. My Edwardian winter holiday is over, and there will be a small shop update, fatsquirrelfibers.com, on January 15th at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Excuse me. This will be a smallish update, but I have a collaboration which I'm hoping will be February 1st, and that will be a larger pre-order opportunity. So I'm excited about that. But in the meantime, a few episodes ago, I had a little bit of musings about my crafty commune. And so this fabric just called to me, right? Oh, so fun. We have a variety of little houses that we can all live in and share our craft supplies and crafting knowledge. And I'll be on duty for Monday dinner, and you guys just take a shift and we'll figure it out. It's gonna be great, right? We got a little mushroom house. We got your more traditional house. We definitely got some hobbiting. We have a little teapot house. There's another sort of hobbity house down here. We have friends, hedgehogs. We have foxes. We have beaver friends. We have so many friends. We have some strawberries growing near the teapots. And we have paths to everybody's house so that you can access your crafting supplies. Purchasing a bag does not get you an auto into the crafting commune, but you're welcome to visit upon approval of the other humans in the crafting commune. That is not a real thing except in my brain, okay? So there are multiple bags. It's not just one, but there's only one style and there's only one size. Because this fabric, you can see the scale is so big, I couldn't even get everything onto a bag because that's how great it is. So just the big guide, just the Aran sweater size will be available in that update, fatsquirrelfibers.com, January 15th, 9 p.m. Eastern. Hopefully collab on February 1st. It will be a yarn and bag coordination symphony. We'll see what happens. So then let's do knitting first, because I feel like the quilting section might be a little bit like cuckoo. And so I will save that in case, it's towards the end, in case you're not as interested in that crafting opportunity. craft. You know, there are words. Oh yeah, ooh, I should talk about that too. Just recalled that So Liberated has just released their Sylvan jacket, and I tested that, so I should talk about that as well. Don't let me forget. Okay, knitting. I finished my Advent socks. Oh, aren't they so cute? So these are Woolens and Nosh in her Advent colorway this year. What I decided to do is, so the sequence of colors went from, I mean, isn't this just great? I was so surprised by this, especially, which one was it? This one. I was like, what? But I loved it. So right, so fun. But what I decided to do is when I got to where the mirror or where the colors start to go back, instead of, so the normal sequence would have come up to the last color and then would have gone back to the blue. But what I decided to do is, since I was like almost done with my sock and I was afraid if I just had those like 2 or 3 stripes at the end that were darker, it would be like jarring to my eyeballs. I decided that I would just mirror the colors. So I broke my yarn after the last stripe. So after stripe 24, I broke my yarn and then went from the other end of the ball and did the rest of the sock so that it just has a little bit of a mirror right here. That's what I decided. Then the contrasting skein for heels and toes came with it. And yeah, love them. So cute. Lately, I have been really enjoying just a true Afterthought. So a snip in Afterthought heel. I do mine deeper than is typical, but I don't add any more stitches. So I have a thicker instep, I guess. So like, if this is my leg and this is my foot, if this is the bottom of my foot, like this diagonal is longer than it is in some folks. So in order to compensate for that and to make my Afterthought heel socks fit more comfortably for me, I do add more rows before I start my decreases on my heel. So I think this had 9. Usually for me, it ends up being about 9 or 10, but you can obviously, you can adjust that however you'd like. And then I just do my decreases as normal. I think when I learned to do Afterthought socks, I learned to do them from a Laura Linneman pattern. So that's an option, but there are lots of other Afterthought sock heel patterns, I'm sure, out there. But the one I originally used was Laura Linneman's, and I believe I'm not going to say it's free because I bought it like, if it was a charged item, it was like 10 years ago. So who knows? And who knows what changes since then? I don't know. But love, love, love. And I know that she also has like other options for increasing that measurement, that kind of instep measurement, where she does some short rows, I think. So she's done other work on that as well. Okay. I have not finished, but finished the body of my academic vest. So this is a pattern by Skeindeer Knits called the Academic. And you can see it is well, you probably can't see that it's fingering weight, but it's fingering weight vest that uses stranded color work. So you use stranded technique, and there are steeks for the arm side, and then there's like a V-neck in this. So that's why it looks so tiny at the top. It does. I should have warned you that maybe beforehand. I do have a narrower shoulder set than most people my size, but not this narrow. But this looks so squinched up because there is a V-neck gusset that has to be cut open right there. Gusset. Steek it's kind of a gusset. That needs to be cut open. That's right there. You can see those kind of stripy stitches. That's where it'll get cut. So I used Jamieson and Smith, their 2-ply jumper weight in colors that I purchased at, there's a yarn store in Paducah, Kentucky, something Rose, I want to say, but anyway, they have Jamieson and Smith and Jamieson's of Shetland in-house. So, and lately I've been having deep fantasies about doing that, you know, the Pearl Soho, like the half, maybe I should just look it up and tell you what. instead of just sort of trying to illustrate it and just, you know, not do very well at it. Maybe I should do that. The half and half triangles wrap. Such a hot mess. So Pearl Soho has that fingering weight. They use their quill, which I have used before, and it is quite pleasant. But I thought they also have a striped version. So you can do either the 2-color version, which is like half of the triangles one color, half triangles other, or they have a striped version where half of the triangle is like big chunky stripes, and then the other half of the triangle has some skinnier stripes, and that one utilizes 6 colors. But anyway, so I've been having very deep thoughts about maybe wanting to make one out of Jamieson and Smith. I don't know. Jamieson and Smith, if you follow their Instagram account, they do like photographs, and then they take a color inspiration from the photograph. And they have far too many of them, and I want to do all of them as shawls because it's so exciting. Because of course the beauty of doing a shawl is you don't have to worry as much about contrast. You don't have to worry as much about value issues. You can just be like, oh, those colors look beautiful together because Jamieson Smith put them all in a row next to each other, next to a pretty photograph. And now I want to make that thing. I'm such a mess, y'all. Such a mess. If you want to know what colorways I have, I actually put a project page on Ravelry. Is it even possible? Probably. I mean, I don't know. It never happens, so who knows? Maybe that was just a fever dream in which I was updating things on Ravelry. Clearly. But in case... I don't have a picture of there, but in case you're interested, the colorways are there. I will tell you in case you are not Ravelry friendly, or in case Ravelry is not you friendly. That's a better way of saying it. It's colorway 78, FC 68, FC 11, 141, and number 23. So number 23 is the yellow. That's my poison color. And it really is playing so nicely with the green, which is FC 11. This kind of like very grassy green. 141 is what I would like to say is the squash, the Hubbard squash colorway. And then FC 68 is the dark brown, and 78 is the main color brown. And it's from Tuscan Rose in Paducah, Kentucky. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad I looked this up because now I know where yarn source from. So I still need to just cut open my steeks and do all of my ribbing for my arm size and my neckband. And that's always a fun process. I enjoy that quite a bit. I just didn't quite have the focus, concentration, bandwidth, what have you, to sit down and cut my steeks and do my pickups. I probably won't reinforce these steeks like a crochet, because you can sew them, you can crochet them, but with the Jamiesons it's sticky enough that you don't really need to, and I might just roll those dice. Because I love to live on the edge. I really don't. I'm terrified of the edge. But with knitting, I like to live on the edge. I could handle those stakes. And so then I have a couple of new cast-ons. I actually finished a couple of hats that I don't have pictures of to show you, so they don't count. But I will tell you this. So one of the hats I was trying to make, I was making Jacqueline Cieslak's BB beanie, and I had some, I had some Arroyo from Malabrigi, right? Why do I always just get confused about words? Yes. So I had some Arroyo from Malabrigi, and I had, because the one hat I made was that Matisse blue, that like really hot blue color. It's like this crazy blue color. And then I was making the same hat in a different color, right? In fact, I was making it in this cactus flower. And I was making them with the Jacqueline Cieslak pattern. Well, excuse me, the Jacqueline Cieslak pattern has, I want to say, 4 different gauges for multiple sizes. So you can do fingering, I think there's like fingering, whatever. There's like fingering, sport, worsted, maybe there's another one. I don't know, I'm just talking out my butt. But what I did is I was knitting on this one. So I finished the blue one. It was all ready. And the pattern has a provisional cast on, and it's a hemmed beanie. So you do a provisional cast on, you knit the depth of your beanie, or excuse me, the depth of your hem, fold it off or fold it in half, and then do like the 3 needle. It's not a bind off because you're keeping them live, but you do a 3 needle join around, and then you just do the crown of the hat or the top of the hat in a single layer. So unlike the muscle burr, which is 2 layers throughout, this one is just a folded hem and then a single layer at the top. So I finished the blue one, I was pleased with it, and I'm knitting on the pink one, and it was one of those projects where I was like, I needed it a few days after Christmas, so I kept back burnering it thinking, I've got plenty of time, it's just a hat, I've got plenty of time. Well, wouldn't you know, the day before, I'm like, oh crud, I need to get that hat. 2 days before, I'm like, oh crud, I need to get that hat finished to gift. So I'm feverishly knitting away on it, and all of a sudden I look at it and I'm like, I like my hats to look kind of like baby sweaters while they're in progress because I like a loose hat. But this is a gift, and I was A, trying to make them about the same, and then B, I thought that would be a more universal fit, is to fit more like a traditional beanie. So I'm looking at it, and all of a sudden I'm like, wow, this seems kind of big. And I hold it up next to the other one. I'm just about to start the crown decreases, by the way. I hold up to the next one and I'm like, ooh, this looks, and I'm like, surely not. Like, my gauge couldn't have changed that much. I count my stitches, and I had randomly decided that instead of doing the sport weight one, I would do the fingering weight one in the sport weight yarn. So like the second hat had like 20 more stitches on it than the first one did. Luckily, I had a muscle burra that I had almost finished. Like, again, I was almost to the crown decreases, and it was out of like one of the Zalver balls, and it was also pinks, like hot pinks, and it was, but it's marled and like hand spun, and I was like, oh, I hate to do this because they're friends, and I was like, I don't want to give one a different hat than the other, and maybe that would look like I liked one of them more. Oh, whatever. But I just had to do it because I was like, I can't reknit this entire hat in like one night and get it washed and blocked and all that stuff. So I have been knitting for oh my gosh, this will be my 24th year? No, more than that. Oh my gosh. I taught myself to knit in 1996. So this is like my 28th year of knitting. Whenever, 28 years, I still decide randomly to do the very wrong thing. And then don't notice it until the project is almost done. Dang it. So anyway, she did in fact like the muscle burr and the different yarn, so I think it worked out okay, but oy vey. And what I did is that with the Malabrigi, Arroyo, and cactus flower, I decided to combine that with a skein of Webb's Southampton. So that's Northampton. No, they're not. Are they Northampton? They're not Northampton. Valley Yarns. Oh my goodness. Northampton Wools is a yarn shop. Valley Yarns in their Southampton. So it's their mohair silk one. Just in the natural white. I think they have like an optic white and a natural. It's the not optic one. I decided to combine those two because I wanted to knit this cute little hood. The Bonbec, which is called a cowl, Bonbec cowl by Emilie Louise. And it is just, it's knit with fingering weight and mohair silk. So mine is sport, so I'm cheating a little bit. My gauge was different, and I am adjusting as such. I'm knitting a smaller size from the pattern. But you're knitting like a cylinder for this part, and then you open up the cylinder and knit the hood. There's some shaping at the hood, of top of the hood. So I have just finished knitting the like cowl part of it, and I am on to the knitting of the hood itself. So I've got quite a bit more knitting to go, but isn't it so cute with the mohair in it? Oh, so enjoyable. So fun. So if you have, like, I've kind of, I don't super love superwash wools for myself anymore. I'm not against them. I prefer knitting non-superwash wools. I just like the way they feel more. I like the texture of them more. And so one of the ways to get around that, if you do have some superwash that was left over from a project that you were giving to a non-knitter and now you have it, or you just can't resist buying the hand-dyeds, it's gorgeous and it's superwash, you can always add a little mohair silk to them, because it just gives it, especially for something that you're looking for warmth, like a hood or a hat, it just helps trap a little bit more air, gives it a little bit more warmth, helps to mimic the warmth of a woolen spun yarn a bit more, but you can play with the fun colors of the superwash. You can totally dye non-superwash yarns in fun colors. Many dyers do. It's just that superwash yarns, are kind of, they appeal to more human beings in many ways because they are easy to take care of. They appeal to dyers because they don't have to be quite as delicate with them. They don't have to worry about shocking their temperatures and things like that they do with non-superwashes. But also because when you remove those scales from the superwash, it makes it take dye really well. So you can get more saturation. You can get sharper contrast between colors. You can get more speckling effects and things like that when you're working with superwash. So you know that, but she didn't. So I just, I know that you knew. Okay, so that is the Bonbec cowl. It is written in 4 sizes. Yes, it's written for 4 sizes. I will say, I did the math of my gauge change and everything like that. And I knit the size that was indicated. This is also a gift that was indicated for that human being. And I think that the cowl part, the neck part, is kind of small. So I ripped mine back and redid it. I also originally had done a tubular cast on, and then I was like, why did I do a tubular cast on using mohair? You can't, it's not worth the effort. So when I cast back on, I just used a regular, my preferred cast on is a twisted long tail cast on. So I just used that one. But so I'll give you a warning. If you're a person with a bigger neck, or if you're a person that doesn't like snug things on your neck, just kind of be aware, do your math of like what the circumference is and what have you, if that is something that you're concerned about, because my math was correct. It was just that this is knit with a smaller cowl circumference. I feel like I've just said the word circumference like 75 times. It's like I'm teaching high school geometry again, but without the healthcare benefits. And also without having to teach geometric proof. So, it works out. And then the last thing I have to show you in terms of knitting is I cast on the Bay Pullover, which is a pattern by Jacqueline Cieslak. And it is this fun shape. It's the big dolman sleeve, which I can't decide if I like or not. So like, let's just knit a whole sweater with it, right? I think I'm still trying to work out whether or not I like that last pullover I knit with the beautiful Republica Unicornia clam hot red mohair silk. Oh my gosh, this is too many words. I haven't really I've not spoken very much in the last week, so all of a sudden I'm using all the words and my brain is having a little trouble. Okay. So it's slightly similar, but it has like a tighter cuff and it has like this neckline, like the boat neckline. So I'm trying to decide if like I should modify that one that I have, because originally I thought I'm just gonna like pass it along, whether I resell it or whatever. I'm gonna rehome that in some way. But I really do like the look of it so much, and I really like the colors. And so I was like, maybe if I just go like knit back up to like the sleeve and then make the sleeve a little bit wider, make the cuff a little bit looser, because I was also dealing with having not enough yarn. But I bought a couple skeins of the yarn to try to, so that in case I want to play with it, I can, which I think means I'm going to play with it. But anyway, so I'm going to knit this one to see, how do I like the difference of the neckline? Because that's the one thing that will be a little bit more challenging to change, only because, I mean, it is a more challenging thing to fix, but it's also because the color work of the other one is really set up to be a straight line versus a yoke. So I'm not sure if that'll work. But in the meantime, also this one has a really crazy construction, which I'm excited to play with. So for the Jacqueline Cieslak, you do a provisional cast on like mid-arm, or like a little bit below. You knit the front and you do some shaping up here. You knit the back the same way. You join them, and then you pick up for the bottom. What? So part of the reason that you do that is because all sizes cast on the same number of stitches. So all the sizes are the same length, same width from cuff to cuff. The difference in sizes happens in this circumference here, and then in this depth here. So fun, right? The difference also happens in the amount of short rows you do for like your shoulder shaping and stuff like that. So I have got my, okay, so this is one of my front or my back. So it's done, or whatever, done-ish. This is Barrett wool, their home. So they have some worsted spun yarns and some woolen spun yarns. This is their worsted spun yarn. And this is the colorway Field. Right, it's a really lovely green. It reminds me in some ways of Quince & Company's Honey, but it is greener. Like it is more green than that. So that one is much more gold, but it still feels like that. And this yarn is very enjoyable. I've knit with it before. I think this is 4 plies. I don't want to lie to you. Oh, maybe it's only 3 plies. I guess it's only 3 plies. But worsted spun, very nice. It has 230 yards to 100 grams, so it's still fairly light. It is not a superwash wool, so it is 100% American wool. I originally purchased it thinking I would make like a cabled, more traditional cardigan with it, but I do what I want. So yeah, so my provisional cast on, there's my top, and then I have my other side started. Boop, 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 boop. Middle of the row, yarn wrapped around it. Now, I've only done a podcast for like 12 years or something. I'm this much done. So yeah, that's a fun construction. And I am currently working on it. Okay. So then, okay, let's talk about quilting. I feel like I'm on a making thing, and then we'll do books at the end. How about that? Okay, so I finished, and I can show you, I finished Figure out which of the many places I've put information. I finished my quilt for a friend that I had not shown you that I told you I was working on. It's called the Layer Cake Loop, and it's a free pattern by Fat Quarter Shop. And I will put a picture of it in here. So again, that is fabric by designer. I don't know because I've never, this person has a real butterfly thing, the friend that this was going to, and she saw a butterfly quilt when we went to a craft show, and she really, really, really loved it. And she kind of like went back and forth, but it was like maybe not quite big enough, and so she did not ask for a quilt, but I just saw how much she really enjoyed it, and I thought, so this one, this Layer Cake Loop by Fat Quarter Shop, hence the name Layer Cake, it does utilize a layer cake. So the layer cake is just like a set of 10-inch squares of fabric. And it's a pretty easy pattern, so it's great for a beginner, or if you're just trying to do something that you would like to have a sense of accomplishment and feel like it's finished. I made mine, I think I made mine slightly bigger, but I say that with such a pause. I know that it was, the pattern offers multiple sizes, and I did make mine bigger, or I made mine bigger than one layer cake would accomplish. That's probably what I did. Mine ended up being about 72 inches square, and the reason I did that is because she was kind of using it almost as a bed quilt, so it needed to be bigger than just a throw. And so, oh no, I did. Okay, I used their size 72.5 by 72.5 for a lap quilt. But that required 2 layer cakes, and I only had 1. So I just had some yardage to make up the difference. There was yardage that had those big motifs, if you cared to look at the quilt. I did the big butterflies were like in a panel, and so I had that extra beyond the layer cake, and I had a little bit of extra yardage as well. So the pattern itself offers a throw size, a lap quilt size, a queen quilt, and a king quilt. And I don't know if you can tell from my picture or like how trained your eye is for doing, but that's what a quilt block looks like. It's just basically you're sewing this square to this rectangle, and you're sewing this rectangle to this square, and then you sew them together. So each quilt block only has 3 seams. And I think they finish at like 11 inches or 12 inches, something like that. Anyway, it's a nice basic quilting pattern. There you go. I don't know what else I thought I needed to tell you about it. I also finished my Broken Dishes quilt. And I think I showed it to you before I had shown the binding on it, before I had washed it, but I wanted to show it to you after I washed it as well. So I'll put a picture in here. So yeah, that is my little sort of scrappy half square triangles quilt. So this is called Broken Dishes. This little, I'll show you, this block right here is called Broken Dishes traditionally. And you can see it's just 4 half square triangles. You can combine half square triangles into like 8 million different combinations for different effects. But I went ahead and went with this one. It's really nice because when you do 4 at a time half square triangles, like ta-da, like there's 4 in each block. So you know that you have the right combination to make all of them the same in the block. It's just easy on your brain when you're not doing a big plan ahead kind of thing. So the backing is just an art gallery print that I had from a while back. And it looks a little bit dingy is too strong of a word, but a little bit dingy, but that is because the batting I used is brown. It's a batter. The batting produced, I think she said it's by Zellinger's, the Michigan mill. And it looks like this. So I didn't want to change my back. I mean, I had this back, I had enough yardage of this to do a backing, and it's just a quilt for me. So I was like, I'm not too worried about it. If I were going to give it as a gift, or if it was like if it was a big project that I had invested a lot of time and money in, I would have chosen a different backing for it because I would not want the darker color to show through. But for this, I didn't care, or I didn't care that much. I have washed it, and you can wash it, but you just need to wash it like you would wash wool. So I washed it. Did I even use? I guess I used the delicate cycle on my machine, but I did not dry it. I just let it spin out and then just hung it over my drying rack to dry. And it dried. That just sounds weird. It dried really quickly, so I was afraid that it might take quite a while since it's a bigger object. And you know how long sometimes your sweaters take to dry. But it really it felt almost dry just coming out of the spin cycle. So it did not take much time at all, especially in a winter house where the heating is on. I really like how this batting feels. Like it has a nice, it doesn't feel at all stiff, right? It just kind of has a nice texture. My quilting, I just quilted a 1/4 inch on either side of these seams and these seams. So my quilting is sort of just like in a diamond pattern. So if you want your quilt to be warmer, if you want it to have, space out your quilting a little bit, but with this being a non-superwash batting, I didn't want to have too much space between the quilting because it doesn't have anything to kind of bind it together, right? Like it does just pull apart like roving, like that. So I didn't want to put the spacing too far apart. Lots of times when you buy quilt batting, well, whenever you buy quilt batting that's like standardized, right? Like from your quilt shop, it'll say on there like what the minimum quilting distance is or maximum quilting distance is. Lots of times it's 8 or 10 inches, something like that. But because this is a less standardized product, there's not that information out there, or not that I could find. So I didn't want to tempt fate too much. So that. I really like the way it feels. I really like it just has a really nice crumply texture to it. It did not feel like, I was afraid that when I washed it the first time it might kind of get clumpy. Well, it did not at all. I mean, I'm not saying that won't happen down the line, but it definitely did not happen the first time. The only thing, it was a little bit harder to work with than traditional wool battings. For example, I got my batting I used Dream Wool. And so the other quilt that I just showed you, that layer cake one, I used Dream Wool. And so this is like part of the thing that I trimmed off. And it looks more like a traditional batting. It's much more consistent. And you can pull it apart, but it doesn't like pull apart nearly as easily as this other batting does. So this batting was harder to work with in terms of laying out my quilt, laying out my backing. It was harder to kind of get that because you just can't be quite as, when you're smoothing those fabrics to try to like not get bubbles and stuff in your quilting, sometimes it takes a bit of like force and motion to get those fabrics smoothed out, and you had to be a little bit more delicate with this. So because of that, I was like much more forgiving with myself in terms of having like pleats or bubbles or whatever you want to call them show through in the backing. The front I didn't have any trouble with, but I know that there are places on the back where I had, even though I used a walking foot, where I had a little bit of pleating. I mean, even there, I don't know if you can actually tell through a camera. Oh, there's a thread I need to trim. I mean, need. Well, now that I say that I had trouble, I don't really see them as much. Maybe there's like just a few places. Oh, here's one. That like you get a little like pleat in the quilt because it's the foot pushes and it's pushing against something that's already stitched down, and so it buckles a little bit. So I was just like, okay with it. You know what I mean? I was just going to be fine with it. Normally, normally I'm not too particular. I'm not like, oh, it has to be thrown out or it has to be completely undone. But I do try to be careful to have my fabrics as smooth as possible before I start to sew them, so that that's not as likely to happen. But yeah, like this is really the main area that you can probably tell because of the print, that there's a little bit of warbliness, but it's not bothering me in any way. What else? I used Aurifil 40 weight thread in this kind of fun mint colorway. I don't know what the colorway is, but it's like a mint color. And originally I thought I would just do white on the background, but I left it and I actually do really like it. It just has it's just enough that you can see it, but it doesn't look like there's a line. And yet on the front, I feel like kind of gave it the same effect. Not quite as much contrast as a white would have done, but you can still see the stitching in lots of places. So I'm actually quite pleased with it. I just found another thread I need to trim. Excuse me. So yeah. It wasn't harder to quilt in terms of like, my machine didn't dislike it or anything. It has more thickness to it, but again, it compresses almost just about the same. It's just fluffier. And so my machine didn't have any trouble with it or anything like that. Yeah, it was really enjoyable. I liked it. I don't know that I'm not thinking to myself, oh, I can only use this kind of batting now. But I wouldn't be opposed to using it again. It definitely has, like, it is more challenging, but I also really like being able to buy a product from a farmer, which is really for me, that's the appeal, right? Is that I can like actually buy it from the human who is the guardian of those sheep and the caretaker of those sheep, and I can put money into their ecosystem through this, which is the main reason I was at all interested in it. So yeah, if you're a quilter, I would encourage you to try it. You don't have to do a big project, right? You could just do like a small, I wouldn't do like you wouldn't do a wall hanging or anything. You could do whatever you want. But it might be good to use something that you are going to launder just to see how it does. And again, this has only had one launder. So I don't know how, I'll keep you posted of how it turns or how it washes up long term. Why do I have a job where I talk so much? It's really criminal. So the other fun thing about the this kind of batting is that you can just spin your leftovers if you want to. You can spin them, you can felt them, you can use them as core wool, you know. So you can put them in your garden to fertilize your garden. Maybe you can do that with the dream wool, but I don't know. I don't think it has scrim in it, but it has to, doesn't it? I don't know. So another thing I wanted to kind of show you, hopefully, if I haven't pulled this apart too much by being silly, it's just to kind of give you a side view. I mean, I need to actually fold this so it's less visually confusing. Just to give you an idea. That gives you no idea. Okay, I took a picture, so I'll put the picture in here. Maybe that'll give you an idea. So the small mill wool is definitely much loftier and fluffier than the dream wool. And I have not used, I think Tuscany also makes a wool batting. I've not used it, but I feel like it's pretty similar to the dream wool. So yeah. So the negatives of the mill process, the small mill process battings, are, I would just say that it's a little bit more challenging to work with. There are less sizes available, but that said, whereas normally if you are putting two pieces of commercial batting next to each other, you have to do a process to join them, right? Like there's a process involved. There's a process involved. You can't just butt them up against each other and then quilt it. Or you could, but that would probably be a problem. One nice thing about the small mill batting is that if you do need a bigger size and you need to put a couple of pieces together, you really can just sort of like stretch out the top one and stretch out the bottom one. They will automatically stick to each other. You can kind of level it out that way, just like you would imagine with wool, right? Oh, here, this maybe shows you. This is sort of like, can you see my face through there? Just to give you an idea. It smells very nice also. This is a thinner edge because this is the edge of it, but that said, it would also be very easy if you wanted to make it a little bit thicker. You can easily like web out a layer and put on another layer. Whatever. Okay, you know what I'm saying. There is maybe one of you who cares. I cared a lot about it though. I was really interested. What happened is I went to Yellow Springs last year and one of the farmers, Angry Goat Experience, I want to say, she had a batting that she had a couple of different battings there, but they were really small. They were like more crib size. And so I was trying to figure out how I could utilize them and I could not think about it. Well, later I realized I could have bought a quilt batting and made Annie a quilt. My dog. My dogs really love wool batting in their quilts. I say their quilts like they have their own quilts, but they will soon. They love our quilts that have wool batting in them. So I was standing at her booth, like trying to figure out how I could justify purchasing this because they're not inexpensive. Oh, so just to give you an idea, I would say that just like anything, right? There's a variety of prices out there. I would say that dream wool versus like the small mill wool batting, the small mill batting is about 2.5 to 3 times the expense, depending on where you're getting it from. The dream wool batting is really affordable. Like every time I buy it, I'm like, are you sure? I'm like, is it really? I mean, it's not like free, but you know, wool is so expensive that I'm always kind of surprised that it is. Don't tell them I said that. But I am always kind of surprised that it's not much more expensive. And I buy mine from Crimson and Tate, which is my local yarn store, so I don't have to worry about shipping or anything. But now I need to look it up because I've already talked to you about it. So for example, the twin size batting, which is 72 by 93, the wool is $35. The dream wool. Doesn't that seem really affordable? I don't know. So I have so I'm working on Annie's quilt and I'll just show you briefly that so far. I'm just doing a flannel solids. So I purchased, it's like the smallest piece ever. So this little tree print. I bought that for the backing, and then I just tried to do the colors of the stars sort of like based on that. So I have this green, I have this gray, which I really like, and I have this blue, and this sort of goldy tan. These are all, so the backing is art gallery, and then these are Mammoth. So the backing is art gallery, these are Robert Kaufman. And I think I think the green and the blue one are organics and the other ones are plain. I didn't need them to be organic, I just needed that color. And I actually prefer the plain ones more. They're a little bit more floofy. They're a little bit more brushed. Sorry. I've been gulping my tea and so I'm burping. So rude. That's the only thing I don't like about the like lidded cups is like I tend to like swallow more air when I'm drinking out of them, and so I get a little bit like, anyway. So I'm doing these squares for her. It's just going to be a small quilt. I think right now, these are 8-inch. These will finish at 8 inches. So I have enough to do 5 by 5. So right now, 40 by 40, but I have more of these, of the colors. I ran out of the white. Hence, there are 2 squares that have these as corners. Whatever, I'll put them on the corners of the quilt. It'll be fine. So 2 squares that are these because I ran out. But I have a bunch of these, so I'm trying to decide if I should do some sashing. Annie is this big. Maybe when she's like stretched out, she's this big. I hope you did not just get a terrible shot of my unbroad chestage. So she does not need a big quilt. But I have this extra flannel and I'm like, it's not enough to like do much with. And also I don't want to have to like, I don't want to have to maintain too many scrappy stashes. And like, I don't want, it's so stressful. So I'm trying to decide if I should do some sashing. I might just do it just for the practice of doing it. And it would be kind of fun too, because it'll be different colors, because I don't have enough of one color, I don't think, to do all of the sashing with one color. So it would be like cornerstones. So like cornerstones are when you have like the little square in between. So it would be like little shorter blips, which might be cute. I could also do the cornerstones in the background fabric, the backing fabric. That would be cute. We'll see what happens. I am slightly constrained by the amount of backing fabric I have, but slightly constrained because Annie won't care if I have to piece the back. She won't mind. She's very forgiving. Oh my goodness. Oh, so I'll be right back. I want to show you one more thing. I just have to show you this. So do you remember when I went to Ma's Got a Notion and I got a bunch of homespuns and I just showed you like a big wad of them because I was like, ah. Well, I had them just in like a plastic grocery bag. But then I was like, I can't just keep these in this grocery bag. So I needed to look at them because I wanted to plan my next project. So I put them in these little IKEA boxes that I had. Look how pretty it is. I'm such a nerd. Let me just tell you, when I was in my early 20s, I literally took fabric and made photocopies of it, like color photocopies of it, which I had to like go to like a Kinko's for. I made color photocopies of fabric. Well, for one, to decoupage something with. I don't know why I didn't choose the fabric. I think because the fabric was too precious to me or something. And I also framed fabric because I loved the like graphic design of fabric. Like I loved the colors and I loved the prints, but my friend was like, I don't think you want to be a quilter. I think you just want to have fabric. And I was like, I think you're right. And so like I was able to just like use some like little cheapo plasticky frames and frame fabric and just like put them in a little grid on my wall. And that was enough, but now it's not enough anymore. I mean, part of it is also like, you know, now I have a sewing machine and stuff. But I just want to, like, isn't it just so nice? I feel like I just want to have like a shelf. Like this one, I don't even know it has to be a project. I just want to put it on a shelf and be like, yes, that is satisfying. What's wrong with me? But so this is my next project I'm trying to plan for. I also want to make all of the clothes. I want to make clothes out of this. How enjoyable is that? Against my fluorescent red face. Right, this one. This one. Okay, I'm not going to show you each one like an animal. Also, I had much fun folding them. Like they had all of them folded except I bought like 4 or something that were in a different packet and they were folded cute. They're folded like little triangles and they were like all scissored together. It was very cute. But I wanted to put them in with this mix, so I refolded them like they did, and this was also just very enjoyable. I enjoyed folding the fabric. Who am I? But anyway, I want all of these. I want all of them in everything. I'm especially laughing because I'm about to talk about this book about consumerism. I'm especially laughing. I contain multitudes, it's fine. So yeah, I'm just trying to like meditate on what this project will be. It's going to be a very traditional quilt, I think, in terms of like, I mean, most of my quilts are. Oh my gosh, there's another quilt I have to talk to you about. Gosh, y'all. So that's what I'm thinking on. But then I also need to show you, oh, the mailman's here. Gus is going to bark. Beak. So anyway, that one will probably be a pretty traditional, I don't know, I'm thinking about Dutchman's Puzzle. But maybe it'll also be a 16 block with just some wider sashing. I don't know, I can't decide. 16 patch. But I also finished my Cozy Village. Well, I didn't finish. I finished the top. I finished piecing my Cozy Village quilt, which is a pattern by Cotton and Joy. And it is written to be layer cake friendly. So those 10-inch squares I was talking about earlier, it's available in a baby 43 by 48, a throw size 58 by 68, excuse me, 43 by 47. Why are there 2 different dimensions given? Okay, whatever, it doesn't matter. Baby, throw, and queen. Queen is 88 by 90. And then what I did is I used the 2-color version extension, which is available on their website, the Cotton and Joy patterns. They have it just done up as 2 colors. So I did the 2-color version, and I will put a picture of my finished top here. So the fabric I used, the houses are Kona in snow, and then this background is Essex linen, so it's a cotton linen blend, and this is their speckle, and it is, I think, pelican, dolphin, porpoise. It's an animal. Anyway, so it's speckled, so I was hoping it would kind of look like snow. So it's all pieced, but I need to actually quilt it. And then the fabric I have for the backing also has little houses on it. Because I'm so fancy. This was a very speedy piecing project. Like, very speedy. Even the little ones with the windows were speedy. Yeah. And it's especially speedy, of course, using just 2 colors, because you don't have to stop and think about like, oh, what door color goes with what roof, whatever. It made it very speedy. The only difference is I did use a color for the door. So there's a house that has just a door, and I did not use the background. I used this little one just because I don't know, for some reason the gray door I just didn't like the look of. I don't know why. It's weird. Originally, or excuse me, as I was getting ready to sew it together, I thought, do I really want the gray for the windows? I was afraid it was going to just look like sad, lonely, empty houses. So I tried using like a sort of warmish yellow that I hoped to look like kind of like glow lights. The glow of lights, but I did not like the way it looked. So I just went ahead and went with the gray as suggested. Yeah. The only thing I would suggest is if you are going to make this and you're going to make it in 2 colors, wow, that is a big subset of the people who might be watching this. That's like 1/2 of 1/3 of you. So to the 1/6 of one of you who might want to do this, just talk to you a minute. So the original pattern has each, you cut out each window as its own square, and each little bar is its own bar. And you sew these 3 things together, and you sew these 3 things together, and then you sew them together with the thing in the middle. But if you're going to just make it out of 2 colors, just strip piece those dudes. Just use like a long length of fabric, sew the long lengths together, and then subcut them to make the windows. I don't know why they didn't tell you to do that in the 2 color version. Maybe it would have just been it would have been confusing, right? Because it would have also altered the like main directions. But I was glad I had enough extra fabric to do that, because I would have really been angry. I was sewing all those little like 1.5 inch squares together. That's not the kind of quilter I am. I'm not as much of a process quilter as I am a product quilter. I can enjoy the process, and I try to make quilts where I will enjoy the process, but I don't enjoy the fiddliness, so I try not to do fiddly. So red. Okay. That's Cozy Village. Okay, now that we've just like talked so much, let's talk some more. And so then what I'm reading, lots of other things, but these are the ones I'm going to talk about. So I just finished Follow the Flock, which is by Sally Coulthard, subtitled How Sheep Shaped Human Civilization. I think I started this, I looked at my Goodreads, I think I started this in August, but I started this and The Lost Flock at the same time, and I think it was just too much sheep reading in my, even for me, it's hard to believe, but it was just too much sheep in my nonfiction diet, and so I put both of them down and I hadn't picked them back up. But I do recommend this one. I haven't finished Lost Flock, so I'll talk about that another time. For my sheepy friends, my friends who enjoy sheep, I think it would be more appropriately titled How Sheep Shaped British, maybe Scandinavian, maybe American Civilization. I think human civilization is a bit, I mean, that would just be a lot, right? But I think it's a little bit far-reaching to claim that. It's definitely centered primarily on British, especially when we're talking about like post-ancient civilizations. So like when we're talking about industrial and briefly pre-industrial, especially medieval on. Okay, what are words and things? That said, if you like sheep, if you like wool, I do recommend it. If you enjoy nonfiction, I do recommend it. Things that I thought were especially interesting, I'll just parse out a few of the things I thought were especially interesting. Okay, one of my favorites, which really was, it's like on page 7 according to my annotations, talks about like how sheep were why brought into the human flock. Why? I can't think of what that word is. You know what I mean? Oh my goodness. Why were they made as a part of agrarian culture? Like, what is this word? I know you're all yelling at me. I hear you, but I can't exactly tell what you're saying. Domesticated. Oh, thank you. You said it loud enough and I heard you. Thank you. Okay, but this is super fun. Talks a lot about like domestication of sheep, but this is I don't know why this was so fun to me. But here we go. It makes sense on the face of it, but there's an issue with weaning. Any lamb that was old enough to survive by grazing rather than its mother's milk was probably nearly full-sized. So they're talking about like this idea that maybe like we were able to domesticate them because we took lambs and brought them in and like took care of them, you know, whatever. And then they became more used to humans and then, you know, et cetera, et cetera. How that it's easier to domesticate an animal if you can get it while it's young. But anyway, so it's any lamb that was old enough to survive by grazing rather than its mother's milk was probably nearly full size and not the easiest candidate for a grab and run, meaning like taking it out of the wild. Life would be immeasurably easier if you could get a very young lamb and imprint it on a human. That way, it would form such a close attachment to a person that they could control its every move. The only way to do this would be to take a lamb from its mother as soon as it was born and breastfeed. And so astonishingly, the history of sheep may indeed start with a woman nursing a newborn lamb. I never thought or heard of that theory. There is not a footnote listed, so I'm not sure, like, you know, the provenance of this, but I just think it's a fun thought experiment, if nothing else. Another thing that I thought was very fun was she talks a little bit about Jason and the Argonauts, so the myth of the golden fleece and how they have to go get the golden fleece to prove that he's the person who's going to be in charge of stuff, blah, blah, blah. But the mythic quest may have taken its inspiration from a genuine voyage that took place between 3,300 and 3,500 years ago when an intrepid group traveled from mainland Greece to find Colchis, a kingdom near the Black Sea, which was famed for using sheep fleeces to sift gold dust suspended in mountain streams. The clear creeks of Sventi in Georgia still flow with gold flecks. Villagers to this day continue to plunge wool fleeces in the water, the grease of the wool capturing any floating gold particles. After drying, the fleeces are shaken to release the sparkling, pure gold dust. There's another theory that it's to reflect how valuable wool was to the Greek culture. I like that other one of this. I like it. I'm going with it. All right. Or that again, there's at least this like, that there are literally gold fleeces. Oh, so fun. So that was super fun. Lots of other good stuff. Oh, another one that was fun was talking about the lactose enzyme. And so that, you know, and a way to preserve milk, is of course to ferment it in some way, right? And that breaks down the lactose into something that's easier for people to digest, but it also makes it lose some of its caloric value. And so that there might be like this evolutionary advantage or the survival advantage, because the ability to digest milk would have been particularly beneficial for groups who had migrated to cooler temperate places in Europe, as it was an additional way of getting vitamin D, the other main source being sunlight, blah, blah, blah. Hence, only 2% of people in Denmark are lactose intolerant, compared to virtually 100% of Zambians. So is there anything else I especially liked? I did appreciate that there was more in-depth information about the clearances. I knew about I had heard about the clearances in England and Scotland, but she has more in-depth information about like the surrounding, like, I don't know, I just always was like, okay, like the landowners decided to get rid of all of the people, and there was obviously terrible consequences for people because wool was worth more than the people. But like, that was just like my very basic understanding of it. But she talks more about like, she situates it more in history, like in terms of like, as partly in reaction to the depletion of the workforce due to the Black Plague in specifically England, I think, because it's the Scottish clearances are much later. And like how there were different economic factors that were happening that also made it come about. So that was very interesting. Oh, and then the other thing was interesting, I didn't know this, that one of the first vaccines was actually for anthrax, and it was because there was wool being brought in, well, not just because of this, but there was wool being brought into England, and a bunch of people died, and they had no idea why. They called it something I can't remember. But apparently it was anthrax, which I didn't even realize. Like, I knew animals could have anthrax. I don't know why it never occurred to me that it would also then kill people who were handling them. But that was a big part of why Pasteur was able to develop, and he tested his anthrax vaccine on sheep. Like, they had 10 unvaccinated sheep and 10 vaccinated sheep. They exposed all of the sheep to anthrax, and all but two of the unvaccinated sheep died, and then those other 2 died shortly thereafter. And so that was like part of like how the anthrax vaccine was developed and propagated. That's not the right word. Whatever, it's part of its development. So anyway, so there's lots more information. There's lots of information about Vikings and like ancient felt head dress. It's very interesting. And so the last thing I briefly want to talk about is Having and Being Had, which is a book I'm currently reading by Eula Biss. It's a series of essays. Some of them, I mean, most of them quite short. Really, I don't think I've, like 2 to 4 pages is the vast majority of them. And so they're very interesting. Like, when I think of essay, that's how I think of. These are like poem essays, right? Like, they vary a lot in their density and their complexity. I originally started listening to this on audiobook, and I was very intrigued by it. But I think partly because the essays are so short, it was harder for me to sit in them as much as I wanted to. Because when I say poetry, I really do mean that. Like, they are very thought dense, reflection dense. I feel like I wanted to sit with them more. And so it's harder for me to do that on audiobook just because of how I consume audiobooks. Also, I think because they were so short, sometimes it was hard for me to differentiate, like when we had changed essays. And I know that the narrator, like that each essay is titled, but the titles are very often just like one word. And so it was harder for me to differentiate what was happening. They are broken into sections. I think there are like, I don't know how many sections because there's not like a table of contents, but one of them, excuse me, one of them is called consumption, one of them is called work, one of them is called investment. And so the essays, while they do have a general flow of consumerism, capitalism, reflection, they are sort of like then segmented into smaller categories. I have enjoyed the first section the most, so the one called consumption, but I am just now starting the investment one. But since I am a person without capital, I don't know that that one will be as powerful to me. It's probably just gonna make me angry. But so she doesn't really, like, if you're looking for a book that is more economics based or is more problems, solutions based, this one is more just like, this is like you're sitting in the park, you're watching like your nieces and nephews play or something. You're sitting in the park and you happen to sit next to somebody and you strike up a conversation and you're both just like, wow, that's messed up, right? And then you're like, yes, thank you. I don't have an answer. I don't have an answer. But thank goodness somebody else is like, this feels messed up, right? So it's like that vibe, right? Like, she is not offering solutions per se. She's also doesn't feel like she's judging me or you per se. Like, she's not coming after your Stanley Cup necessarily. Not saying that she won't, but she's not in this book. it is more of just that like, wow, this doesn't feel right. Does anybody else notice this doesn't feel right? And she's like, yeah, no, I don't think it feels right either. And you're like, thank gosh. Thank you. So it's more of like a vibe check kind of thing. But boy, it feels really good to have somebody else be like, what? And then to offer a more considered view on that. Like, so then go deeper into that. And again, almost have a dialogue. Like, it is not offered as a dialogue, but you can interact with it, I think, in that way. When, you know, you can process it in terms of like reflecting back on your own situation and like looking in through her. It's really unique, but I like it. And I don't think I've read any of her other work, but, or if I have, I don't know that it was her because I don't remember those things. But like, it is just very enjoyable. And also sometimes not enjoyable. Sometimes it's a little uncomfortable. Okay, it's more than a little uncomfortable. But I think that that's always a pretty good indication that what's being said is useful to me. So yeah, I just started the investment. I was going to read you something. I really want to read you like a whole chapter, but I don't know if I'm allowed to do that, like laws and stuff. But one of the first things I really like resonated nicely with me was she's talking about IKEA furniture specifically, but she's talking so the dresser is simple and shaker in its design. Shakers believed the end of the world was near, which would seem to be an argument for temporary furniture, but making something built to last was for them an act of prayer. Do all your work as if you had 1,000 years to live, Mother Ann Lee told her brethren, and as you would if you knew you must die tomorrow. Well, here's another quote, another in the same chapter. The ease of self-invention that IKEA enables is liberating, Lauren Collins writes. But it can be sad to be able to make a life or dispose of it so cheaply. If you get it, if you check it out, Consumers. It's not even 2 pages. So good. I wish you were here. We could just read it and like chew over it, and you'd be like, "What?" And then I'd be like, "I know," and then you'd be like, "Whoa!" That's exactly what would happen. Anyway. That's it. That's enough, right? You consumed too much of me. Okay, but one of the lovely things I thought I really liked too was that, let's see, there's one thing that, okay. Yes, we consume fossil fuels and the eat up, devour, waste, spend sense of the world, but we don't consume music. Music becomes part of us, as food does, but it isn't destroyed in the process. I really like the thought of that, because we just think about, like, I think about consuming those things equivalently. Like, not, I guess I don't think deeply about consuming those things, but I do really love that. Like that, yes, we are consuming media, we are consuming art, but our consumption of it doesn't destroy it. It in fact like gives it other energy and other life, and I like that is like oof. That's not to say that sometimes my consumption of media, I mean, while I'm not, I mean, it's sort of like me destroying. Like some of my consumption of media is like thoughtless and just like, you know, and I don't know that it necessarily is transformed by my energy field in any positive way, but it has the potential to be. I'm also listening to digital minimalism. Oh my gosh, I'm talking about these. Listening to digital minimalism, and it's this theory of like, you know, we like trying to find this balance of like, I don't want to be a Luddite, like I don't want to reject all technology, but I also like know that it's when I am too saturated by it, it doesn't align with my personal morals and goals. So it's like finding that balance. And so he's talking about like this like sort of like 30-day, he specifically says not to call it detox, but it's essentially like a 30-day, like no technology that is not required by like your work, you know? And so I'm all like, oh, I don't even think I need to do that. Cause like, I don't really have, like, I don't feel like I am deeply invested in social media, like in a way that would be problematic for me to not do it for 30 days. And then he's like goes on and he talks about, and then I have other people that ask about video games and whether or not the video game should be part of their no technology, because it's not new technology. It's been around for a while. And then he talks about like, you know, how the games are used and like whether or not that warrants like taking them away for 30 days to really reflect on how you're using them and whether or not they align with your values. And then he had to talk about streaming services. And that's where I had to put a pause. Oof. Right? I immediately was like, oh, he's coming for me. Never mind. I don't know that I'm interested in this anymore. Which clearly indicates that I do have a problem. Because I thought of like not having any sort of like, or again, well, to initially have none for 30 days, but then also to be very conscious about how much I'm consuming after that is really... Right? But I also think that that's what I really should do if I really want to align with my personal goals. Again, I'm not, you do you, like 100%. This is like for me. Like I had fantasies of like being on a deserted island. Okay, specifically had fantasies of like being like a lighthouse person, or more specifically, taking over Jim Bretz's role as the post office operator, mail carrier, delivery person on Middle Bass Island, because I knew in the winter like that there was like a total shutdown. Some years it used to freeze over Lake Erie. Doesn't really anymore, you know. Like I had deep fantasies about not being able to have access to television, because I knew how I consumed it and how when I consume it, it often keeps me from doing things that I really do think I want to do and maybe should be doing, but that are not, but whatever, that require more of me. And so like that's a deep, like that's before the internet. Like that's a fantasy that I had before the internet. So the fact that I am like suddenly like, oh wait, what? You want to cover my streaming services? Is funny that surprises me. Because that's clearly what I clearly need to do that, because I've thought about it for years. And even recently I've been like, I need to go on a reading retreat and like, don't give me the Wi-Fi password. Anyway, but that's 30 days. Ooh, I don't know. So that's on pause. But again, I think they're, all these things I'm reading, I'm really enjoying. Even if I am feeling a little attacked by some of them. Let's go back to my sheep books. Thank you. So that's all. For real. And I will see you in a few weeks. Until then, I hope you stay warm. We're having a big storm, Midwesty, probably New Englandy, that's coming up, where we're gonna have some super cold temperatures. So I hope you can stay warm, stay warm and moisturized. And I'll talk next time. Bye.